Jason!
Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, the home of meat, monsters, and machete-wielding maniacs maybe growing weed in the backwoods of New Jersey. I'm Noah Hook, and today we're looking at the 2009 reboot of Friday the 13th. This reimagining of the classic slasher is pretty true to its roots, featuring Jason Voorhees murdering people around Crystal Lake to avenge the death of his mother. The only big differences are that it takes place in modern day, and that this version of Jason is a big, fast, mean-spirited motherfucker. He takes his vicious aim at a group of college kids looking the party, while a man is also searching the area for his missing sister. Well, we finally made it, folks. We are on the last theatrical outing that Jason Voorhees has gotten so far, and how fitting that it's actually happening on a Friday the 13th. This reboot was a collaboration between New Line Pictures, who had produced the previous 3 films, and Platinum Dunes, run by Michael Bay, Brad Fuller, and Andrew Form. Their early years focused specifically on remakes and reboots of horror, including the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Amityville Horror, The Hitcher, and yes, A Nightmare on Elm Street. The producers decided to combine a lot of elements from the first 4 Friday films, hoping to insert a lot of origin and mythology into the character throughout the film. Writing duo Damian Shannon and Mark Swift were rehired from Freddy vs. Jason, and they wrote the script with all of these plans in mind. The team also brought in Marcus Nispel to direct, who had proven himself earlier to Platinum Dunes with the Texas Chainsaw reboot. The film stars Jared Padalecki from Supernatural and House of Wax, Amanda Rigetti from The OC and The Mentalist, Danielle Panabaker from The Flash and The Crazies, Travis Van Winkle from Transformers and Accepted, Aaron Yu from Disturbia and The Tomorrow People, Arlen Escarpeta from Whitney and Final Destination 5, Juliana Guil from Crazy Stupid Love and The Apparition, and Jonathan Sadowski from She's the Man and Young and Hungry. This time around, Jason is played by actor and stuntman Derek Mears from The Hills Have Eyes 2, Predators, Pirates of the Caribbean, On Stranger Tides, Dead Snow 2, Twin Peaks, and Swamp Thing. This is by far the darkest, grittiest, most violent form of Jason we've ever gotten, which is really saying something, and Mears brings such a great presence and tenacity to the character. Cinematography was handled by Daniel Pearl, who also shot the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the 2003 reboot, along with The Boy, Invaders from Mars, No One Lives, and AVP Requiem. The fact that the same guy who shot my personal favorite horror film, as well as one I'd say is the most visually striking of all time, also shot AVP Requiem is really fucking wild. The score was composed by Steve Jablonsky, who also composed for a bunch of Michael Bay and Platinum Dunes projects. He created an original score, but it was purposefully very reminiscent of Harry Manfredini's scores from the first 4 films. Jason's look was redesigned by effects artist Scott Stoddard, who aimed to merge his looks from parts 2 and 4. Friday the 13th had the widest theatrical release of any film in the franchise and ended up making $93 million at the box office on just a $19 million budget. That makes it the second highest grossing Friday film of all time, just behind Freddy vs. Jason. It was not as successful with critics though, who mostly thought this was just a lifeless rehash of a bunch of things we've seen before. It currently has a 25 and 41% on Rotten Tomatoes, along with a 2.5 on Letterboxd, so at the very best it seems to be a mixed bag. I can sit down and enjoy the reboot for what it is, but honestly it's not one of my favorites in the franchise, but I'll wait till we get through the review to get into that a bit more. But hey, it's been a few years since I've seen it, and with all of the previous films fresh on my mind, maybe I'll have a lot more to take away from it. Let's see if this new and improved Jason can really live up to his name, because we're watching Friday the 13th. The movie opens in a flashback, you can tell because it's in black and white, as an injured Camp Crystal Lake counselor flees through the woods. She's being hunted down by Pamela Voorhees, who fills us in on the reason for her revenge.
You need to be punished for what you did to him.
I didn't do anything.
You let him drown. Jason was my son.
Sadly, Mama Pam gets decapitated, meaning her severed head, a locket, and murderous will get passed on to her son. Pam, maybe you should have confirmed your son drowned before killing all of his counselors? He was just hiding in the woods nearby. Ah well, now we jump to the present where a group of young adults are heading out to camp. Spoiler alert though, these characters are simply part of a really long cold open. Lots of horror movies open with some random people getting killed to build up some hype, but I've never seen another film spend 25 minutes doing it. One of the characters is going to tie into the actual plot, so it's a bit more relevant than usual, I guess. The group consists of single dude Wade, horny couple Richie and Amanda, and slightly more wholesome couple Mike and Whitney. Turns out they're actually here to steal from a secret weed farm they've heard about, but when they can't find it, they decide to hunker down for the night. Wade realizes they're right next to Camp Crystal Lake, and he explains the legend of Pamela Voorhees and her backwoods baby boy. Mike and Whitney go check out the old campground, and Wade goes for a weed hunt when the horn dogs start a howlin'. He's jamming the Night Ranger when he comes across the glorious crop, but unfortunately he's been found by the Watcher of the Weed. It's never really confirmed in the film, but I'd like to think this is Jason's little farm. Mike and Whitney explore the abandoned cabins, not picking up on some of Jason's arts and crafts. They do find Pam's locket, and apparently Whitney looks a lot like a young Pam Voorhees. Wow, Jason even had his own engraved bed frame? 4-H ain't shit nowadays. Richie and Amanda's sexy time is interrupted by noises outside their tent, and when Richie goes to investigate, he comes across Wade's corpse. Amanda suffers a tent attack, and when Richie returns, he finds her tied up inside a sleeping bag over the campfire. This is definitely not your father's Jason. He steps into a perfectly placed bear trap and is forced to sit there while his girlfriend is slowly roasted to death. The others find Pam's severed head shrine in a bathroom and realize they aren't alone. Also, is Jason paying this electric bill? Now I'm certain he's selling. He starts stabbing at them from below the floor, getting Mike in the foot, leg, and hand before bursting up and pulling him below. Bagface Jason chases after Whitney through the woods, and she finds Richie is the only other one still alive. Oh fuck, never mind I guess. Jason charges at Whitney with his machete, but we cut to a title card before we see her killed. Now we jump ahead 6 weeks to meet a group of even more miserable meatbags. We've got Richie Rich Boy Trent, who is hosting some of his friends at his family's vacation home, his girlfriend and likely final girl Jenna, token black guy Lawrence, token Asian guy Chewy, hot blonde couple Nolan and Chelsea, and hot promiscuous girl Bree. We also have Clay, who is in town searching for his sister Whitney. He's handing out flyers to the community, but Trent has no interest in waiting in line. The boys start beefing, and Jenna apologizes for her man-child boyfriend. Down the road, Clay is pulled over by a police officer that he's familiar with due to his sister's case, but the police have found absolutely no trace of Whitney and her friends. Next, he stops at a local's home who tells him his sister is dead and he should be careful about where he goes looking. Well, if you thought she was unpleasant, wait till you get a load of this guy. He hasn't seen Whitney, but is excited about the giant bushel of weed he found in the woods out back. The crew arrives at the luxurious Sutton house and gets to partying, much to Trent's chagrin, and Nolan and Chelsea borrow his car to check out the lake. Trent has them drop off some gas at the boat for tomorrow, but commands Nolan not to touch the boat.
Now what does that say about me? That the second that Trent said, "Don't take my boat out," it was guaranteed that I would.
Clay accidentally arrives at the Sutton house, and for some reason Jenna invites him inside. Of course this pisses off Trent, and the boys have another pissing match, and then she joins Clay for a ride to the other side of the lake? Sure, I guess. Gotta find a reason for some character development, I suppose. We rejoin that local fella after harvesting some weed from Jason's stash, and we get an insightful look into his love life.
You remember that special night we had? Remember when you took my virginity?
Loverboy gets jumped by Jason and rips off his mask before quickly getting his throat sliced. His bag face is ruined, but luckily he's able to find a very exciting new look. Oh yeah, Trent and Whitney had a sick mom, but she died shortly after Whitney disappeared. She was the responsible sibling, so he can't believe she left willingly, which is why he's trying so hard to find her. It's nice that they tried to throw some development in there, but I can't say it holds a lot of emotional weight for me. Meanwhile, Nolan and Chelsea have taken the boat out for a topless joyride. She eventually wipes, but while Nolan is turning the boat around, he receives an arrow to the dome. Chelsea gets the Angela Baker treatment, which is honestly a real-world fear of mine, and the injured woman sees Jason watching her from the shoreline. She takes shelter under a dock as Jason searches for her, with him stabbing her from above for a very classy kill. Clay comes across Wade's GPS and the two head into Camp Crystal Lake, and they apparently search the place into the night. They hide when they hear Jason approaching, quickly ascertaining that he is not friendly. He finds Clay's bag and searches for any intruders, but they manage to evade him for now. As they're fleeing, they set off one of Jason's tripwires, which causes a bell in his subterranean hideout to jingle. Jason is a mole man now. Oh, hi Whitney! I would have never guessed you were still alive. Jason returns home to her and adds Chelsea to his meat locker, but she does recognize Clay's bag and finds his posters inside. Jason emerges and takes a moment to admire his mama's picture before getting back to his hunt. Chewie can't handle the heat of Bree's flirting and breaks a family heirloom, so Trent sends him to the woodshed to grab some tools in order to fix it. Also, as a side note, Lawrence and Chewie are by far my favorite characters in this. He scrounges around the house-sized tool shed, and Trent proceeds to cheat on Jenna with Bree. High-ass Lawrence decides to jerk it to a fucking LL Bean magazine, but sadly he's interrupted by Clay and Jenna. Clay manages to call the cops, and Trent simply ignores his girlfriend while he fucks someone else. Chewie's hockey stick shenanigans are interrupted by Jason, who simply manhandles the poor guy before stabbing him with a screwdriver. Then he watches as the marathon sex scene finally comes to a climax, and in celebration he cuts the lights. Trent has a pissy party when he sees Jenna is still with Clay, and as they try to explain the situation, Lawrence heads outside to get Chewie. He finds his best friend doing one of those classic dangling from the ceiling maneuvers when he's jumped by Jason, but he manages to stab him in the leg and make a run for it. Unfortunately, Jason, who also sprints now if that isn't clear, yeets an axe right into his back. This doesn't immediately kill Lawrence and he screams for help, but the group opts for self-preservation and does not go for the bait. Damn, sorry Lawrence. Now Jason's on top of the house again. Boy, he gets around in this movie. Trent runs upstairs to grab his daddy's gun, but Bree follows into the wrong room and gets got by Jason. Ooh, that's a trophy kill for sure, Jason, good buddy. Officer What's-His-Face shows up at the house, but literally gets killed by Jason immediately. Trent starts recklessly wasting bullets all around the house as they head outside, but Voorhees has taken all of the keys. He drops Bree's body down onto the car, and Trent flees away from the other two. He drops his gun into the lake and keeps on moving, running into an ominous truck on the road. Turns out it's actually a maybe friendly local, but Trent is too distrusting and pays the price for it. Okay, bye! Clay and Jenna head back to Crystal Lake because the plot demands it, and they hear Whitney's screams coming from below. They take a trapdoor down into the tunnels, where Clay and Whitney have a wholesome sibling reunion. Jason returns as he frees her from her shackles, and the three make a run for it with Voorhees in hot pursuit. They crawl through a hatch, but poor-ass Jenna just got one-upped on the importance scale, so the would-be final girl takes a machete through the chest. A knocked over lamp sets the tunnel ablaze, and the siblings climb up into an old school bus. Jason catches up, but of course opts not to use his machete on the final boy, although he does fuck Clay up pretty good. Whitney manages to hide and successfully sneak attacks Jason, and with a few more kicks she manages to escape the bus with some help from Clay. They hide inside that fucking barn the mannequin-loving fellow worked in, cause you can't put a wood chipper in a slasher and not use it. Jason jumps through a window and the boys start to brawl, trading a few blows but avoiding each other's deadly swings. The chipper gets turned on in the chaos and Jason prepares to give Clay a very close shave. Whitney pops out on some part 2 shit pretending to be Pamela, which of course distracts the big dumb boy. This allows Clay to clamp him with a bear trap, and Whitney tosses the attached chain into the chipper. Jason is hung for only a moment before the beam holding him breaks, but that just means he's gonna get pulled right into the blades. Whitney continues the recent trend of cliche one-liners before stabbing Jason.
Say hi to mommy in hell!
And the big boy's noggin gets turned into mulch. Apparently the siblings take the time to dump Jason's body in the lake, along with his mask and locket. But y'all know this is a Friday film, so of course the movie ends with Jason popping up for one last scare. And that's Friday the 13th. This one has a lot of really fun elements, but yeah, at the end of the day it is still a pretty mixed bag for me. There are some aspects I really like and some aspects I really don't, and at the end of the day it's just a film I don't feel especially passionate about compared to others in the franchise. It feels like a less interesting retread of a lot of the things that Marcus Nispel covered in his remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is an adaptation I actually really like. On the positive sides though, I really love this version of Jason. I've never considered him a scary character, but this film actually makes him a mysterious threat throughout the film. He is fast, smart, and brutal here. I love the added variety of skills and killing methods that come with this new survivalist lifestyle he has going on. We actually understand how he lives day to day and what drives him as a character, and really anytime that he's on screen I'm having a pretty good time. Unfortunately, Jason can't be on screen all of the time, and most of my issues stem from the other characters in the film. I'm actually pretty conflicted on the first group that is killed. In one respect, I really appreciate this overly long sequence where we kind of get to know them and actually start to believe they're gonna be the stars of the film. But including the flashback at the very beginning, we spend about 25 of the 90 minutes with these characters, and it's that long before we even meet our actual protagonists in the film. For me, the main cast feels really shallow, and I think taking some of that time from those characters and giving it to the main cast would have provided more character development that would have created more emotional depth on the back end of the film. But while I think the opening scenes are a bit too long, I also think those kills are the highlight of the entire film. Those 10 minutes or so between Wade and Richie getting killed are really eerie, really intense, and really gruesome. Jason is really scary in this segment, and sadly I don't think anything that comes after really quite lives up to that opening. And it's also a shame because I honestly liked those characters in their 25 minutes more than I liked the actual characters of the film. I will say that generally this film has some of the best, or at least I'll say the most violent kills of the entire franchise. Richie, Chewie, and Lawrence especially come to mind as their deaths were pretty prolonged and cruel in a way we haven't seen before from Jason. Chewie's especially gave me a Rob Zombie Halloween kind of a feeling. I'm also not crazy about the atmosphere of Crystal Lake and the locals in this film. There's just a lot of consistencies regarding what their role is and how much they know about Jason. This lady clearly knows that Jason is nearby and is murdering people and chooses not to do a damn thing about it. But then it seems the officer, who somehow searched Crystal Lake and survived, or at least said he did, doesn't seem to know a thing. And then there's Mannequin Dude, who is just a weird inclusion all around, who somehow doesn't know about Jason despite literally being in his backyard. And is Jason farming this weed or what? Mannequin Dude was only killed because he found the weed stash, so was he killed for stealing or just trespassing? It's just very convenient that he found the weed and got killed the same time Clay and these college kids show up as well. But my biggest complaint by far is Trent. He just takes the wind out of my sails every watch through. I'll admit there are some lines that are actually really funny throughout, but the trope of the sarcastic rich bully boyfriend is really uninteresting to me. I know the goal is to get me to root for his death, and it succeeded, I did, but just because I didn't want to watch him anymore. I love it when a horror movie, especially a slasher, can create really likable characters that you start to get attached to and feel for when they actually do get killed. Part 6 is a great example of this. None of the camp counselors deserve to die, so I actually felt something when they were killed. I don't care about Jenna, Trent, any of their cliche friends, or even Clay and Whitney for that matter. None of the Friday movies are character-driven films by any means, but I honestly expect more from newer movies, and especially if it's a remake or a reboot. But where the reboot loses me a bit with the characters, it does pull me back in with its use of Jason. This film blends together elements from a bunch of the previous films pretty cohesively, simultaneously adding a bunch of mythology to the character, while adding in some iconic moments as well. It tells you everything you need to know, so you could come in and watch this without having seen the previous films and be okay, but there's enough Easter eggs and little moments to be really rewarding for longtime fans as well. All in all, Friday the 13th provides a lot of what someone typically looks for in this franchise. You've got dumbass teens saying dumbass things, Jason killing them in a variety of ways, and a lot of gratuitous nudity in between. It takes the legend of Jason and condenses it down into the most important stuff, creating a lean, mean slasher that will satisfy most franchise fans and gorehounds alike. It isn't one of my favorites, but honestly I could understand it being near the top of your list for the whole franchise, as it is the most fast-paced and violent of all of them. Well, that's about it. What do y'all think of the 2009 reboot? Was this Jason a worthy successor to the original? Let me know down below. With that, we've completed all 12 theatrical releases we've gotten from Jason Voorhees. Maybe one day I'll cover the Never Hike Alone fan films, as those are pretty popular, but at least for now I'm gonna skip them. But we aren't quite done with Jason yet. Join me next week as I rank my top 20 kills from the entire franchise. It's been a while since I've done any kill rankings, so I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you all so much for joining me, and an extra thank you to my patrons. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and thanks for watching Hamburgers and Horror. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching my review of Friday the 13th. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all my horror reviews, and if you want to help support the channel further, you should check out my Patreon account. You'll be able to vote for future movies and franchises I cover on the channel. Thanks y'all.